Hey, 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 happy Tuesday. Come on in. Pull up a chair. The Gaming Gang Dispatch is in the air. Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host, here at the Gaming Gang Dispatch, brought to you by, shockingly enough, thegaminggang.com, of which I happen to be the founder and editor-in-chief. So welcome aboard. Tonight is Tuesday, May 16th, 2023. This is live stream 919. If you're not overly familiar with this show, let me point out, super casual around here. We're not engaged in rocket surgery by any stretch of the imagination. We're hanging out talking about the latest in tabletop gaming news, and normally we'll take a first look at a game. And tonight I am kicking off Cyberpunk RED Week, as we will be taking a look inside the core rulebook from our Talsorian Games. And yes, this is a hefty tome. So we will be taking a look at this tonight. And then, of course, I'll be talking about what we'll be taking a peek at tomorrow night and Thursday night, all having to do with Cyberpunk RED. Of course, should mention that if you are tuning in for the first look and you're watching live, we do tackle the tabletop gaming news first around here. So it will probably be 35, 40 minutes, maybe a little more than that, before we jump on into that first look at the core rulebook for Cyberpunk RED. Do want to let you know that. So, of course, if you are a subscriber to the channel, then you've got something that can occupy your time while I'm covering the tabletop gaming news and more. But if you're watching this 30 minutes or more after the stream has ended, there are show notes with timestamps. So you can jump ahead to the first look if you want. If you're impatient, you just gotta get in there. I understand. So those timestamps are in the show notes, or depending on the device you happen to be watching this on, might be right there in front of you in the timeline of the video. So also want to mention, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more that you will not find here on the YouTube channel. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. So as I mentioned, if you are a subscriber and you're watching live, you have something to occupy your time. That's right, because there is chat available. It's not on screen. That's one of the ways that I keep some of the more unusual commenters at bay. And you must be a subscriber to the channel for at least 48 hours in order to take part in chat. That's yet another way that I keep some of the more unusual commenters at bay. But if you want to say howdy, maybe you've got a question, a comment, maybe there's something about the core book for Cyberpunk RED you want a closer look at, by all means, chime in. I will do my best to respond. So first out the gate tonight was Kathy Evans. And we've got the Madman. That's right, the Motor City Madman, one of our chat moderators, is with us, as is Mark Dandy, Stray Kismet, and John Muscola saying hello from Indiana. I lived in Indiana for a year. Yes, Mishawaka, Indiana. And who else we got in here? I think I saw somebody else. Ah, there it is. Kevin R. Smith. I was going to say, I know there's someone else who's popped into chat that I've missed. So I believe I have said hello to everybody in chat right now. So I've got a good eclectic mix of tabletop gaming news tonight. There are a couple of things I also want to talk about. So let's jump on in to the tabletop gaming news of the day, because arriving in August from Trick or Treat Studios is Halloween, the board game. Yes, Halloween, the John Carpenter classic, is actually going to get a board game. How about that? I didn't realize that it had never been adapted to a board game before. Pretty wild. So here's what I know. It was the night he came home, and one player must take on the role of Michael Myers. The others will control Laurie and her friends as they scramble to find weapons, the kids, and a way to escape. Their task will be made more difficult because Myers can only be seen when you're looking right at him. In this one versus many game, most of the players will run around the board, searching through houses for useful items and for the kids, Tommy and Lindsay. They can win the game by either causing enough damage to Michael Myers or by finding Tommy, Lindsay, and a set of car keys so they can escape to safety. Meanwhile, the player controlling Michael Myers will stalk them, and because he's only visible when someone is looking directly at him, he will be in ever-present danger throughout the game. The Myers player can win by killing enough characters or by preventing the players from escaping for long enough. If a player's character is killed, they lose anything they're carrying, but will come on board with a new character from the movie. This one versus many game is by renowned designer Emerson Matsuuchi. I don't know if I've pronounced that correctly. And as I mentioned, is the first time the original Halloween movie has been made into its own board game. Halloween, the board game, which is what I'm calling it. I think on the Trick or Treat Studio site, it just says Halloween game. Can't just call it Halloween, because then that gets lost in the shuffle with everything Halloween. So I'm calling it Halloween, the board game. And it is for 2 to 4 players, ages 14 and up, plays around 30 to 60 minutes, and it will carry an MSRP of $59.95 when it arrives in August. So you'll have plenty of time to get ready to play it on Halloween. I gotta say, I am intrigued, although I must say, I think $59.95 seems pricey for what I see as far as the components. If they were like miniatures as opposed to standees, then I'd probably say, oh yeah, sure, $60. Oh yeah, of course. And yes, I get it. There is licensing involved because got to pay to be able to use Michael Myers and all the other characters from the film. But still, $60, little bit pricey. Perkins Dearborn and Quantum Phase Dragon and David B. and Joseph Quam are hanging with the gang in chat tonight. Welcome to you all. Moving right along, now available from GMT Games is The British Way. And here's the skinny. The British Way, Counterinsurgency at the End of Empire, is the first of several coin multi-packs containing 4 separate games exploring a series of thematically related insurgencies. Between 1945 and 1960, the British fought 4 major emergencies, as they referred to their counterinsurgency campaigns, each trying to manage their retreat from empire. The 4 games in this pack focus on exploring British counterinsurgent responses to a variety of different opponents, including communist insurgents in Malaya, militant nationalists in Kenya, and smaller and more clandestine terrorist organizations in Palestine and Cyprus. The games adjust the core coin mechanics to provide a compelling new way of handling two-player conflicts, while also streamlining several mechanics to quicken gameplay. The British Way offers an approachable introduction to the coin series for new players, while presenting experienced players with 4 mechanically distinct games to explore and compare. Some of the highlights: first of all, there's 4 full games in one box. Explore 4 different conflicts set during the twilight of the British Empire in the 1940s and 1950s. Each game uses a unique rule set building on the same general mechanical structure, ensuring that they are easy to pick up while still offering a distinctive experience. It's a new adaptation of the classic coin system, improved 2-player sequence of play, and a versatile political will track for determining victory. There are unique mechanisms reflecting the British approach to each conflict. New villages in Malaya, the pipeline in Kenya, curfews in Cyprus, and mass detention in Palestine. It's got a small board footprint with quick but deep gameplay. Each game plays in under 90 minutes and takes place on a single 17-inch by 22-inch board. An End of Empire campaign is included, which allows players to play the 4 games in a linked series with a cumulative scoring system, random external events relating to British decolonization, and new mechanics to integrate each game into the campaign. The British Way is for 2 players, ages 16 and up. Scenarios play out in around 90 minutes, and the collection carries an MSRP of $79. Yes, very, very nice. So if you recall last week, I was talking about a collection, a coin collection that's on the P500. Gosh, now I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. And the British Way was mentioned, and I was like, wait a second. What are you talking about? I haven't heard of that game. It is now available, and I should point out, it's not real obvious that it's out. If you go to the GMT Games website, normally there's a section there that shows their latest releases. It is not part of it. But if you do a search for it, then it comes up and you can order it. So there you go. There is that. Andy Man's Gaming Channel is joining us. I think this might be a first-time visit from Andy Man's. So welcome. They're actually listening while they're painting their figures. It's kind of funny. I was just having a discussion with somebody about miniature painting the other day, and it's actually my pharmacist. I know. Found out that my pharmacy that I go and get my prescriptions at, 3 of the people who work in the pharmacy are all gamers. And they watch the show. I was like, what? But I was talking about how when I used to paint miniatures, because I never have time to do that anymore, I would always have movies on in the background. And they'd always be movies that I had seen quite a few times, because then I really didn't have to pay that much attention to them. So, like, if a favorite scene would come on, I'd stop and I'd watch that and then go back to painting. Christopher Rush is hanging out, as is Testy Trekkie, also saying, hello, Choomers, ready to hit Night City? We shall be in a bit. It's kind of funny you had said Choomers, because I was sitting there thinking, is it, what what is the one? There's one in, I want to say it's Shadowrun. There's one in Shadowrun and there's one in, I think that it's only one in Cyberpunk and Cyberpunk Red. Isn't one Chumbas and the other is like Chumers? I think the Cyberpunk is Chumbas. I don't know. It's been a long time since I took a look at the starter set, the quick start, the jump start, if I remember correctly, is what it's known as for Cyberpunk Red. But we will find out because we'll be looking in the book in just a bit. Christopher says Shadowrun is Chumer with a U, and then says that Cyberpunk is Chumers with two O's, or Chumba or Chumba. Chumbawamba. All right, very nice, very cool. How about some role-playing game news? Because available in print from Lead-Filled Games and Exalted Funeral is Norovia, the dark medieval fantasy setting for OSR. Well, that just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? Here's the latest. Norovia is a land existing in a world of nightmares. This ancient place struggles against spirits, disease, and the unknown. The people are busy surviving between lunar cycles and harvest season. The winters are long, the mountains are steep. Sorrow so clouds this land that the shadows lead the living. Enter Norovia at your own peril. Norovia is a dark fantasy setting for old school essentials, or any BX-based tabletop game, inspired by Brotherhood of the Wolf, which we have talked about not too long ago, Twin Peaks, Bloodborne, and the Dracula mythos. It includes the player's pamphlet. In this pamphlet are the character offerings to any intrepid enough to brave the dangers of Norovia. This product includes a regional map, brief history of the setting, skill origins, and 3 new classes to replace high fantasy race/class. There's the referee pamphlet. In this, the game master is supplied with a skeleton of all they need to run a campaign in the Norovia setting. The various organizations, areas, and settlements of the region laid bare, all populated with fiendish denizens and depraved souls, corrupted by a land in darkness. Then lastly, we have Tooth and Nail. This sandbox adventure offers a rousing mystery in the forested mountain settlement of Bryn Mawr. Interesting side note, growing up as a kid, the intersecting street to the street I lived on was Bryn Mawr. Moving right along, whether it's the roaming hunger of the hunter beast or a foul plot to murder an otherwise harmless baker, damn you, baker, I'll kill you. There's something afoot in Tooth and Nail. The pamphlets total 128 pages. You can order the set for $32 through Exalted Funeral. Those include the PDFs. Or you can grab just the PDFs alone over at DriveThruRPG for a total of $20 because they are separate downloads. And I will point out, if you are kind of curious about this, the player's pamphlet is a pay what you want zero. Remember, we talk about this all the time at DriveThruRPG. If it's a pay what you want, you can pay zero. The author, publisher, whoever, they're okay with that. They know a lot of people are going to do that. They just want you to check it out. And you can always go back and toss them a couple of bucks anyway. So if you're curious, you can take a peek at that. Absolutely free. Roger Perdome is with us as well. Evening to you as well. Welcome aboard. So, there is an excellent money-saving bundle right now. It does feature Paizo Inc's Starfinder science fantasy role-playing game. It is available over on Humble Bundle, and I've got the deets on the deal. Science fantasy adventure in the stars. Gather up your starfaring crew and journey into the storied Starfinder tabletop role-playing game with this bundle of books and digital resources. Start playing today with the digital beginner box, essential rule books, and supplemental manuals. Discover the 6-part Fly Free or Die adventure path and more one-offs and scenarios. Bring your voyage to life with a collection of digital maps, pawns, and more PDF resources. Plus, if you go all in, you get the hardcover Alien Archive Volume 2 and a physical copy of the Critical Hit deck. Do you have to pay for shipping, though? Launch into a galaxy of adventure from Paizo Inc. and help support the Trevor Project with your purchase. So you can jump aboard for as little as $5, or you can go all in, score all 29 items, including those aforementioned physical copies of Alien Archive 2 and the Critical Hit deck, for a $45 donation. These savings run through June 1st, and once again, your purchase will benefit the Trevor Project. Say it time and time again. I have people reach out and they ask, hey, how do I get started with Pathfinder 2nd edition? How do I get started with Starfinder? I don't know. I've seen your reviews and you tend to like a lot of this stuff. I don't know. How do I get into a new system? Without spending an arm and a leg, of course. This is how. I talk about this all the time, that multiple times a year, we will see at least one Pathfinder Humble Bundle, and we will see at least one Starfinder Humble Bundle, and then usually we'll see one that's a mix, where you're actually getting both core books and both beginner boxes. I mean, this is just a smashing deal. I want to say, if memory serves, taking a peek through this, if you don't want the physical copies of the Critical Hit deck and the Alien Archive Volume 2, I think it's a $25 donation, and you get all the PDFs, all 29 in PDF. So definitely check this out. If you've been on the fence about Starfinder, which I say it quite a lot, I know Starfinder's popular, but it really deserves a little more love than it gets. Because if you're looking to just play just the craziest off-the-wall sort of character, there are so many alien species you could play as. It is amazing. So don't miss out. All right, so my final news piece, following a successful Kickstarter for RPG Ramblings Publishing, the first issue of the OSR-focused Gary's Appendix is out in PDF. Here's the lowdown. Written for Old School Essentials, Gary's Appendix is a collective effort by a creative menagerie to create a memorable zine for fantasy gamers. This is a series of zines that explore the curious and fascinating parts of our beloved hobby in a way that's thought-provoking and useful. The inspiration for this zine is the AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide. Gary wrote and collected a vast amount of information, rules, and guidance. Its haphazard nature and perplexing subjects makes it as fresh today as when he penned the work almost 50 years ago. And let's not forget that high Gygaxian language, everyone. The first issue of Gary's Appendix includes Wondering About Wandering Monsters. Many dungeon masters issue using wandering monster tables for their games. Travis Miller unpacks the reasons people hesitate to use this mechanic and explains his thoughts on why they are useful. He provides some solid rules of thumb and ways to change tables to better adapt to different situations. And, on a side note, I will point out if you are going to play an old school game, you have got to have wandering monsters. When people are doing dungeon delves or wilderness adventures, you gotta have it, especially in dungeons, because it's the whole eating up their resources. Chaos, an anatomy of fun encounters. Sometimes we want to add some high action hijinks to our games, but often we come up dry in trying to bring it to our game. Andrew Tryon provides some thoughts and some random tables to turn an encounter into a memorable night of wild escapades. There's a thoughtful bestiary. The bulk of this issue is a bestiary which explores ways to turn mundane creatures into memorable encounters. Procedurally going through the OSE SRD bestiary, Jeff Jones considers a creature's lore, mythology, and ecology and provides ways the dungeon master can make boring creatures such as acolytes, boars, and dryads into unforgettable meetings. The focus is not on adding new powers and abilities. Rather, the focus is on finding what is already fascinating about the creature and bringing that to the forefront. And there's much more. The 48-page first issue of Gary's Appendix, I have to chuckle because it's like, I know what they mean. It's Gary's Appendix, his appendices that are in the Dungeon Master's Guide, especially like Appendix N. Read what's there, right? If you want to get a good working knowledge of fantasy, read that stuff. But I just keep thinking of someone's appendix. Anywho, Gary's Appendix issue 1 is now available in print and PDF. It does carry an MSRP of $18, or you can grab just the PDF alone over at DriveThruRPG for $8. And I've got to say, I am intrigued. I am very intrigued. I think there's actually even a second issue that is, it's either out or it's arriving very, very shortly. So I stumbled across this. I thought to myself, you know what, this looks really interesting. So I wanted to make sure to share it during tonight's news. Who just rolled on in? Vaughn Moore. Good to see you, Vaughn. Thanks for swinging on in and hanging out with us once again. All right, that is it for the tabletop gaming news tonight. Of course, I was just talking about DriveThruRPG. Don't forget, the Gaming Gang, thus the Dispatch, is affiliated with the One Bookshelf sites. So if you are going to visit DriveThruRPG or Dungeon Masters Guild, Storyteller's Vault, what have you, please stop by thegaminggang.com first. Click on one of our banner ads. That way, if you happen to make a purchase, I get a small portion of that sale. And all those nickels, dimes, and quarters really do add up and help keep thegaminggang.com around. Also, if you like this video, you damn well better be giving it a thumbs up. But if you like this video, if you dig the channel, if you find thegaminggang.com to be a valuable resource, hell, if you just like what we do, then you can always swing on over to paypal.me/thegaminggang to make a small donation. And thankfully, there are a lot of folks out there who use our banner ads, or I guess I would say, stop by paypal.me to make a small donation. Thank you, everybody. It is very much appreciated because remember, I don't do Kickstarters. I don't do a Patreon. So one of the few outlets out there, I don't want to call us a major outlet, although the website does pull in well over 1 million unique visitors each year. One of the few people out there doing this who isn't somehow trying to reach into your pocket all the time or guilting you out. Please, please, more, sir, more. Alrighty, so that's the news. So as I mentioned, there were a couple of things that I wanted to discuss tonight. And first of all, I ran it was Castles and Crusades last night. Well, we started like late afternoon. And I actually used an OSE published adventure. So it was for my nephew and 2 of his friends. And I had fun. I always have fun game mastering. Even if the players aren't the greatest, I always have a good time. Because, I do voices and kind of like get up and move around. And so I'm not one of these people who just sits behind a game master's screen. So trying to remember the exact name of the adventure. It's from Wyvern Tales, or no, Wyvern Songs, and it's the first one because they were first level characters, and it is the Peacock Point, the lighthouse at Peacock Point, something like that. It's kind of a fun adventure, and it's not, going to turn into a complete bloodbath. So that is what I did. Actually, I went and made my own Game Master screen. And I'll move my mic for a second. So, you may have noticed the artwork on one side of it, and it is larger than an 8.5 by 11 sheet. So, yeah, I was kind of hoping that it'd be a little smaller because I ordered this, just the screen, and it was sort of funny because they wanted $19.99 for a screen for D&D, but it's there's inserts, so you throw these inserts in, right? And then they had one that was a science fiction screen, and it was $10.99, same exact screen. It just had different inserts, and I thought, well, you know what? I'm not using the inserts because I'm not running a science fiction role playing game, nor am I running D&D. So I have on one side, we've got the artwork from the original Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Game Master's screen, or Dungeon Master's screen, I should say. And then this is the artwork from the Monsters and Treasure book from Castles and Crusades. So the kids, I know they're early 20s, but I'm calling them kids. They thought that was pretty cool. They're like, oh, nice. So things went fairly well. I gotta say, in all honesty, I feel bad for some of these young people today. I'm sure they're not all like this. But my nephew has played a few sessions of role playing games, not a lot, but a few, probably all in all, maybe 4 that I have run. And His one friend said he had sat in during a summer at some like youth group or something like that, and they had a D&D game going with some of the teenagers, and he sat in on that. I don't know what sitting in on means. It's like, did you play? Or did you just sit there and stare at him? I didn't ask. So anyway, I kind of feel bad because these younger people, they have a really difficult time imagining things. At least that's how I see it. And I don't know. And I was talking to my nephew about this last night after his friends had left. And because my nephew was apologizing for them. I was like, oh, don't worry about it. It's not like there's a wrong way to play a role playing game. And I'm like, plus, his one friend had never played a tabletop role playing game. He had only played computer games a lot. So, in some ways, it feels like these younger people just have a very difficult time imagining things. And I think it's twofold. The reasoning behind that, or reason behind that, is twofold. And one is that they have had so much visual stimulation that they can only associate things with what they've already seen. So to some young people, Dungeons and Dragons equates to the Lord of the Rings movies because that's kind of the only thing they've seen. And of course now the D&D movie, which I've seen and I liked. I mentioned that, I think it was last week. So they can't imagine things. Whereas people our age, because I know it's a bit of an older crowd that hangs out here during the dispatch, we had to read. We grew up reading books. And yes, we had Star Wars and Conan, Back to the Future, things like that. But like I had mentioned to my nephew, I said, Back to the Future was a big deal when it came out. I was in high school because it was like, wow, oh, for one, it was a great movie, funny movie, time travel, the whole shebang. Had a little romance in it. But, it was a big deal because we'd never seen anything like it before. Now, there's a Back to the Future every month or more. Now, I'm not saying movies as good as Back to the Future, but you know what I mean, where it's like, wow, it's a visual spectacle and it's practically a weekly event. So I think that's one of the problems is that they've just had so much visual stimulation throughout their lives. And of course they sit there and play video games, which I love video games, don't get me wrong. But I also crack open books too. And I think that's the second part of it. Not enough younger people read. And once again, I'm not trying to make a blanket statement about all young people, get off my lawn or anything like that. Nothing like that. But I'm saying a lot of younger people just don't read. And I've heard many, many people say, reading's boring. Oh, no, I don't read. It's boring. And I think part of the reason why it bores many of these people who say, I don't read, is because they can't imagine what's going on in the book. Because they're reading about something that they have not seen some sort of equivalent to many times. That they're like, that's why I find it very interesting that from what I've seen, many young people read books that are already established television shows or movies. So younger people got into the whole Song of Ice and Fire because of Game of Thrones, which of course it was already popular because the people our age had already read it. So, right, kind of a circle there. So, there were hiccups in the game, and I really wish my best friend Elliot had been there. I know he's telling me that he's going to try to be there, not this next time, but time after that, so about a month from now. Because they could have used his brain power. That's for sure. But I think it went over pretty well. And I have to point out, when we wrapped up, I know, like I said, I know my nephew had a great time. His friends, I wasn't sure about. Now, one of his friends, I heard from my nephew today. One of his friends, because I had mentioned the player's handbook for Castles and Crusades is free. So they reached out to my nephew Cameron and asked, "Hey, where do you get that player's handbook so I can read over it or look through it?" I was like, "Oh, hey, all right." So who knows? So we're gonna try to do that every couple of weeks. I wish I could set something up where I was game mastering or at least playing stuff every Monday. That's kind of why I've changed the schedule to Tuesday through Thursday for the dispatch, is to leave Monday open for gaming. I might even talk to my neighbor, because I know my neighbor's son, who's like probably late 20s, is a gamer. And his friends all get together next door on Monday nights to play. And I've never actually approached my neighbors about it because I was doing the show on Mondays. So the Madman says he uses the same kind of screen and switches out the inserts that go with the campaign. Yep, that's exactly what I figured I would do. So if I run Traveler or Call of Cthulhu, but to be honest, I really don't use the screen when I run Call of Cthulhu. I never have. I really don't use screens. Just like when I was running the game, I was standing. I tend to stand. I like to kind of move around. I'm doing my voices and all that craziness. Kevin says a lot of their early D&D experience was sucking at Pool of Radiance. Did I say hello to Coco B in Disavowed 92? I may have just done that a minute ago. I'm like, wait a second, did I? Did I or didn't I? So Christopher says, don't feel bad for them. They have so much at their fingertips now. I was playing with coins and chess pieces in the school library. That is something else I talked to my nephew about. How growing up, I mean, we got one, Back to the Future a year. Well, we went, 3 years between 1 and 2, and then there was a year between. But like Star Wars, we had to wait 3 years for Empire Strikes Back, and then another 3 years for Return of the Jedi. Now it's like they've got something pretty cool constantly. They're spoiled. I mean, and I don't mean to say, oh, they're spoiled. I mean, they're spoiled. It's just all these riches that they have available to them, and then we had, barely had 2 nickels of entertainment we could rub together. So John says, Jeff, you're absolutely right. Younger people don't have much of an imagination. This is why a lot of my game sessions are theater of the mind. I always do theater of the mind. On occasion with fantasy games, I might, I used pawns last night, and that was just a mark, who's in front, who's in the middle, because I didn't want anybody saying, oh no, I'm not, that's not where I was. Sly Blue Demon has joined us. Good to see you once again. Kevin says they increasingly find they prefer GMing theater of the mind. Yeah. Roger Prudhomme is mentioning quite a few authors that he's forced on his daughter and son. And now they read more fantasy than Roger does. Very nice. Sly Blue Demon says, I started reading in college. Now I'm reading through The Dying Earth. Wishing I took a look at these books in middle school. Coco B says, good thing with D&D Beyond, everyone can have a laptop at the table. Yeah. I do not allow phones at my table. Well, I allow the phones at the table, but I have people put them on vibrate. So Christopher says, we had lawn darts. I think I told you a story how I got hit in the head with a lawn dart as a little kid. All right, Flaming Herons joined us. Good to see you. Okay, the other thing I wanted to talk about real quick. Now, I had tweeted about I was going to take a tabletop role-playing game publisher out to the woodshed today. I might not. So, a company did something that I'm going to be very honest, hurt my feelings. And I think now they understand that. So, don't know yet. I'll hold off. I have not. I got an email, but I think there's another email coming. So it's I'm gonna take somebody out to the woodshed, but it's not going to be who it was originally going to be. So earlier today, Christopher Rush had asked me what I thought of the role-playing game publisher who had an editor. The editor did work on one of their projects, one of their releases, and then the publisher found out that that editor had worked on some release or releases for Lamentations of the Flame Princess. So they took that contributor, that editor, what have you, that freelancer, they took the credit off of the product, but left the work in, and then went public to pat themselves on the back. Yeah. Because we're fighting the good fight. So, real quickly, I'm not going to go on and on about this at all. So, it was Leyline Press. I tried to find their press release where they patted themselves on the back. I cannot find it. So, I'm thinking they may have decided to take it down. So, as I mentioned to Christopher on Twitter, to me, I find it far more problematic that a publisher would have a freelancer do work and then find out that there was something about that freelancer that they had a problem with politically, and then decided that they were going to leave that person's work in their release, but toss away the credit. I find that far more problematic than somebody having worked on something for Lamentations of the Flame Princess. And I get it. I get it. I reviewed the core book for Lamentations. I thought it was pretty cool. As far as a retro clone for BX, I thought it was pretty good. It wouldn't be a system that I personally would run. And many of the adventures are just a little too twisted for my personal taste, right? I'm like, whoa. Even some of the most popular adventures, because I've taken a peek at some PDFs, and I'm like, whoa. I was like, I don't think I wouldn't be running that at my table. Well, once again, as I've said before, I am not here to police things that to be honest, I mean, I share games that have been created, designed, written by a wide variety of people of all stripes, all political makes and models, all gender makes and models, all colors of the rainbow. So I am not here to be like, oh well, that person's transgender. I'm not gonna share any news about. No, I don't do that. Just like it's like, oh, well, that person leans, to the right politically. I'm not gonna. And if you watch this show, you know I'm a liberal. You know I'm a liberal. But it's shit like this that just irritates me because it's I don't know anything about the reasoning behind Leyline Press and what was it just because, oh wow, so this guy just worked on something for Lamentations of the Flame Princess, and I know a lot of people have an issue with James Raggy, isn't it Raggy the Fourth, because he took a photo with what Jason Peterman or whatever the fuck that guy. That guy's an ass clown. Whatever, Okay, fine. Don't buy this guy's stuff. Don't buy. Don't. I'm not telling you to buy anything from anybody you disagree with in any respect. But don't you think the onus was on the people at Leyline Press to have known about this before the product was finished or it was ready to go to print or it was printed? Don't you think that would have been a good idea? It's kind of like, oh, yeah, Jeff. Oh, my gosh, man. We love that work you did for us. Awesome. The books are going out this week. Oh, sweet. Very cool. Hey, by the way, you didn't happen to see that newspaper article from about a year ago talking about how I eat babies, right? Did you see that? Because I just want to make sure it's not a lot of babies. Right? It's like, what? So, Jason Mountain's with us. Hey, Jason. Kevin says they're with me on this. They have an absolute right to refuse to work with somebody in the future if they find their conduct objectionable. Yeah. Right to work, baby. And taking their name off it is bizarre. Yeah, that to me is the weirdest part. If you don't want any affiliation, okay, fine. But you got to take their work out of the equation. Now, if they were an editor, if they were a freelance editor, it's going to be a little difficult. So, Kevin says Wizards of the Coast did this to RPG Pundit. Sort of like, yeah, I've caught a few videos of his. I don't necessarily agree with him. But once again, if he came along and said, hey, Jeff, would you do a review of, doesn't he do like a fantasy role-playing game that's kind of supposed to be like in England and it's kind of more gritty, and if he came along and said, hey, would you mind reviewing this? I'd be like, well, yeah. I mean, you don't eat babies, right? And he'd hopefully say no. I'd be like, well, yeah, sure. That's fine. I don't agree with you politically, but I'm not here to police, so because that to me, that's as bad as sitting there and being like, oh, poo-poo. Sitting there being like, oh, well, I'm going to sit in judgment of everybody. I don't know the whole story of all this stuff. So anyway, there was another notorious personage when they became too controversial for 5e. Are we talking about Zach? That's another dickhead. Anyway, but they were consultants on 5e, not actual designers, writers, editors, etc. Christopher points out they're also not a fan of Leyline blocking anyone trying to discuss this matter. You got to realize a lot of these companies just do not understand how social media works. They just don't. And they don't know how to deal with the public. Many tabletop role-playing game companies, sorry to say, are not run by socially experienced people. Well, I guess we will say, right? Not, once again, it's not a blanket statement. I'm not saying all of them, but there are quite a few where the company is just a handful of people. They hire freelancers in that, and they are gamers. They are not, social media experts. They are not PR experts. They don't know how to correctly spin things. Not to say that I do, but I also don't do really stupid shit. Or, knock on wood, usually don't do really stupid shit. Jason says, speaking of corporate controlling the world, how about that Cyberpunk RED? Yes, we are getting there. Mark Danny says, Lion and Dragon. That is it. Thank you. And Kevin Smith says, yes, it's Zach S. I figured that's who you meant. I said it before, and we're going to get to Cyberpunk RED in a moment. I warned people up front that it would take a bit before we got to the first look. And if you tend to watch the show live, we do the news, and then a lot of times I discuss what's going on in the hobby. Anyway, I was going to say, Bill N says, I joined the channel right as Jeff says, person is a dick. Good evening. Howdy, everybody. So-and-so was a... Anyway. Yes, and baby eating is a big no. All right, anyway, okay, so I'm thinking about Cyberpunk RED. to jump into it. So we will be doing that in just a moment. All I'm basically saying is I completely disagree with Leyline Press and what they did. And to go and release a public statement about it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Jordan Chris is popping into chat. I think this is first time visit for Jordan. I find your line of thinking refreshing, Jeff. People have lost art of civility, critical thinking, and mutual respect despite differences. That's how I grew up. I mentioned before, I'm a huge liberal. I'm a lifelong Democrat. I vote Democrat. I dated a Republican for years. And she and I just knew politics were just kind of off the table. That was it. But we could agree on so many other things. I don't buy into this whole let's divide everybody. It doesn't make any sense. Now, that doesn't mean I have any time for people who are hateful or bigoted or prejudiced or anything like that. But people can have different thoughts and ideas. It's okay. Flaming Huron says, I'm scandalous. Yes, I am. I know that. Alrighty then. So we are going to be diving on in to Cyberpunk RED in hour 3 of the dispatch tonight. No, I'm just kidding. We're going to dive on in right after this brief intermission.
It's intermission time, folks. Time out for a delicious snack in our sparkling refreshment building. Every item a fresh, appetizing taste treat.
Hold it, Romeo. It's time for Hires, that real old-time root beer.
Since 1876, for pleasure and thirst.
You taste the difference. The flavor of actual root, bark, and herbs.
Ours to you, all your taste desires. For purity and better flavor, stop and have a Hires. Yes, youngsters, oldsters, all agree. Here's a drink for all the family. From the bottle, fountain, and the keg, too. It's real old-time Hires root beer for pleasure and thirst. Hires to you. Patronize the refreshment stand here for popcorn, sandwiches, candy, ice cream.
And Hires root beer.
Follow the bouncing barley berry.
Duke's brewed with big round barley, Charlie. That's why it's got the kind of rich round flavor ordinary beers have not. It takes that bigger barley, Charlie, for flavor that's rich and round.
Next round, Charlie.
Make it Duke. Charlie, that's why it's got the kind of rich, round flavor ordinary beers have not. It takes that bigger barley, Charlie, for flavor that's rich and round.
Next round, Charlie.
Make it Duke.
Isn't it time you wrapped your thirst around a Duke?
This volunteer doesn't drink Wilkins instant coffee.
I hope you know what you're doing.
Oh, I do.
Hi, I'm the Soaky Kid. Now Soaky the Fun Bath comes in 2 brand new monster toys.
The creature from the Black Lagoon. That's cold.
And the Mummy. Wow, what happened to you?
I fell off my bike, Sonny.
Here's something to cheer you up. The brand new Soaky toys.
Me, Mummy.
And me, the creature.
Come on, let's take a Soaky Fun Bath right now. Bet you these new monster toys will scare the dirt away. Soaky soaks you clean in oceans full of fun. Clean before you're done. Soaky soaks you clean.
And every girl and boy
gets a toy when it's empty, it's a toy. Look for Soaky the Fun Bath in the new monster toys. The creature and the mummy.
take a soaky bath today.
Fun, fun, fun.
More fun than getting dirty.
Yes, that is my absolute favorite of the Wilkins coffee commercials. That's why you've seen it a few times. Although, you may have noticed, no, you probably didn't. There are more than one versions, I guess I should say, of that commercial. Because there's another one where Wilkins just looks like, he's like maniacally just sawing. Sweet. Oh, sorry. Chat moderators, we have to ban Jason Mountain. He's a Republican. So off he goes. We can't have any Republicans. No. Jeez. I guarantee somebody's going to be in the comment section going, I can't believe it took you an hour to get to Cyberpunk RED. I hate your show. Some people enjoy watching live because there's discussion going on. Other people don't because it's like, damn it, Jeff, do you think maybe you could get to the games you're supposed to cover tonight? Which the game I'm supposed to cover tonight is the Cyberpunk RED Core Rulebook. That's right, I am kicking off Cyberpunk RED Week. And of course, this is from our Talsorian Games. It's written by Mike Pondsmith, James Hutt, Cody Pondsmith, Jay Parker, Jay Gray, David Ackerman, and Jay Kovac. A lot of J's. And all spelled differently. The 459-page hardcover is available now. It's been out for a while. Carries an MSRP of $60, or you can grab just the PDF alone over at DriveThruRPG for $30. Christopher Rush is jetting out. Good to see you, Christopher. I'm sure you'll catch the rest of the show on Memorex. Swing on over to the other camera because here I've got the Cyberpunk RED core rulebook. So before we dive on in, do want to mention the fine folks over at our Talsorian Games were kind enough to provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this coverage with you. And of course, these days, it's important to know that. Also, want to point out, we're not going to look at each and every page, but I do want to give you a good feel for what's in Cyberpunk RED. And of course, I will have a review in the not too distant future. So let's take a look at the back here. Cyberpunk RED. Welcome to the time of the red, Choomba. There we go. There's the Choomba. The mega corporation spent decades wrecking everything, and in the aftermath of their last war, everyone has to fend for themselves. But that's just fine. You can handle it. After all, in a world of vicious booster gangs, rampaging cyborgs, corporate assassins, and nihilistic doomsday cults, there's only one rule. Always take it to the edge. Take the big risks, get the big rewards. Be the action. Start the rebellion. Light the fire. Never drive slow when you can blaze a trail. You've hooked your Militech pistol to the interface in your brain, upgraded your cybernetic fist with carbo glass blades, and installed cyber eyes that can pierce through the red haze like morning fog. There's a world full of opportunities out there just waiting for the right edge runner. Maybe that's you. And of course, talks about what's in here, which we're going to take a peek. Jason says they love the lore, and hopefully someday they can run a group through RED. I like Cyberpunk quite a bit. I am going to say something that might be considered sacrilegious. I gotta point out, I always like Bruce Sterling's work more than Gibson's work. I know, you're all tuning out now. I don't know, it's just... So, now a word from the management. All right, first of all, we've got a lot of artists who are involved in this core rulebook. I'm not going to read all their names because I'm sure I would butcher many of them, but do want to give them some credit. Hopefully the video is fairly clear, and this is going to be jam-packed. So it looks as if we're going to start off with a bit of fiction. I wouldn't be surprised if we end up with kind of a history of what's gone before. So let's see what we've got here. Oh, this is kind of cool. Here's our intro to Cyberpunk. And we have these little side boxes where it's like, oh, you want to learn more about this? You want to know about this? Want to know about net running? Skip to page 195. Want to know about power players? Skip to page 304. Nice. And then it also looks like we're getting kind of a rundown here. So there was the crash of 94. Street slang. Different roles. The core of cyberpunk role-playing, even after a massive war between mega corporations followed by an atomic bombing, the world of cyberpunk is a combination of savage, sophisticated, modern, and retrograde. Fashion model beautiful rocker boys rub shoulders with battle-armored road warriors, all of them making the scene in the hottest dance clubs, sleaziest bars, and meanest streets this side of the post-Holocaust. And every single one of them has a role, an occupation they're known by on the street. So we've got rocker boys, solos, net runners, techs, med techs, medias, execs, lawmen, fixers, and nomads. And I would not be shocked if we were to see some additional classes in some of the supplemental material that is out there for Cyberpunk RED. So we get a flowchart of how to create your character. So you're going to pick a role, you're going to run your life path, roll your statistics, calculate derived statistics, set your skills, record your weapons and armor, record your outfit, record cyberware. So here we've got a street rat or edge runner, and then we have creating a complete package character. So it appears that we've got a bunch of random tables to kind of help create a background for your character. So as an example, what kind of rocker boy are you? You're rolling a D10. Could be a street artist. You could be an orator. You could be a politico. What venue? Why did you leave? This is actually pretty cool. And is going to be very, very helpful for players who don't really know much about not only Cyberpunk RED or Cyberpunk 2020, but Cyberpunk in general. Flaming Heron says it is a foolproof character creator. Nice. All right, Madman's got to run. They've got ribs to thaw because it's Friday game night. Sweet. So it's going through our skills here. So this looks pretty interesting too. So we've got our awareness skills, and it's showing. I would take a guess. It's been so long since I took a look at the jump start. So I kind of I should say I kind of don't remember the mechanics. For some reason, I want to say it was percentile dice. I might be wrong, but we get a breakdown of the different skills, what kind of category they fall into, what attribute or stat. I think there's stats in Cyberpunk. It relies on, and it's kind of nice where it's just like, okay, body skills, dance, okay, dexterity, skill of dancing at a professional level. It's not, oh, look, here's 2 pages devoted to dance and the dance skill and all these different examples of how you can use it and things. Now, I'm not saying that that doesn't work. I don't mind having a game that has skills and a lot of skills that will give you an example. Oh, okay, like this. Oh, in a situation like this, you would utilize this skill. The problem I get is when we just get all this just like info dump of information about a skill that should be pretty obvious in the first place. All right, edge runners get 86 skill points to be distributed between their characters' skills to raise their totals up. These points may not be applied anywhere else. No skill can be higher than a 6 or lower than 2. Following skills must be at least level 2. So we've got like athletics, perception. So it looks like we've got a good amount of skills without getting crazy. Flaming Heron says, Cyberpunk game where dancing is the main storyline. I'd like to see that. That would be pretty wild, I'm sure. Jordan Chris says, I am going to be playing the Politico. I don't know about that. How you get your stuff. So this is all player character generation. And then we get putting the cyber into the punk. says, let's begin by straightening one thing out. It's cyberware, not cyberware. Cyberware is stuff you can remove. You're not just wearing it, chumbada. You're a tourist. You've not yet committed to the edge. So it's W-A-R-E, where. So it looks like got the breakdown of all the various different gear, cybernetics. And then we get some examples of cyberware based upon your occupation, your job, your class. I know it's not called a class in Cyberpunk RED. The Fall of the Towers. So it looks like we've got some more fiction. Looks like it was pretty quick there, though. Getting it done, the basics of resolution. So I'm taking a look. Okay, so this is mainly this kind of getting into combat. Oh, okay. It was a D10 because I remember the D10s because they had these custom D10s in the Jumpstart, if I remember correctly. That's why I was thinking, oh yeah, percentile, but no, it's a D10. And it's a D10. Aren't you looking to roll higher than something? Yes, the difficulty value. So it's your stat modifier plus your skill modifier plus a D10. Game Master's Hobby is back with us. Good to see you. Says that to play Cyberpunk or Shadowrun. That was a question back in the 90s. It was, wasn't it? I think it is still a question that comes up from time to time with people. And I would say, from my limited experience with both, and I did have Shadowrun when it first came out. And I picked up all the splats, never ran it. It was another one of those games where I was just buying stuff to read and check out. That's why I've got an incredible imagination. Going back to our discussion from earlier. I would say if you are looking for a true cyberpunk experience, there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that Cyberpunk RED is going to be the way to go. No doubt. It is also unfortunate that, for the most part, from what I have seen, and I haven't seen a ton, but from what I've kind of seen, what I've heard through the grapevine, is Catalyst Game Labs is really, really botched Shadowrun pretty bad. That there are a lot of people out there who are just massive fans of Shadowrun, and they've been with it for a long, long time. There you go. Game Master's Hobby says, as long as it's not 6th edition. Okay, see, like I said, there's the grapevine in chat telling you. The concept of Shadowrun was very interesting. I think it's another one of those role-playing games that just went way too overboard with their meta plot as well as the splat books. So it was right about that same time that you were seeing all that Vampire the Masquerade stuff too. So it was kind of like Shadowrun and Vampire were kind of, we've talked about this kind of stuff before, usually when we chat about Vampire. But I think Shadowrun fell into this as well, where they were pushing all these other worthy role-playing games off the shelves of your game stores because Shadowrun was popular, Vampire the Masquerade was popular, but other companies weren't getting an opportunity for their games to be popular because they couldn't get them onto the shelves. So it looks like now we're into the hacking and portion. The net running, I should say. Bill N. I don't think I've said hello to Bill. Howdy, Bill. Says Shadowrun 4th edition revised is, in their opinion, the best version. So John Muscola says, yes, but the 20th anniversary using the same edition forces you to buy more books. Yeah, I got to be very honest. I'm starting to have less and less time for companies that want to break up the actual game for you to be able to play it over more than 2 books. I don't know. It's just me. And yes, I know Paizo's breaking theirs into what, 3 now, which I gotta say is fair because that core rulebook's over 600 pages. I can see it being broken down into 3 books. So I'm not really talking about Paizo Inc. So here we get. This looks super cool. I gotta admit, this looks great. And it looks as if everything is presented in a format that is easy to understand and easy to utilize. Now, yes, granted, we've got a lot of tables throughout here, but if you know where to find the table, then it's not that big a deal. And it looks like a lot of these tables are just not going to be utilized a ton. So very cool. Critical injuries to the body, dismembered arm, dismembered hand, crushed fingers, torn muscles, critical injuries to the head, lost an eye, brain injury, damaged eye, concussion, broken jaw. Trauma teams, which isn't, now, once again, we've got some folks hanging out in chat who are very familiar with Cyberpunk RED. Aren't the trauma teams sort of utilized as a weird way, I would kind of say like healers in a fantasy role-playing game, where they're there to kind of bail out your player characters when they're like on death's door. Bill says it's nice how much you can do with the Cyberpunk RED core book. Yeah, there seems to be quite a bit to it. And of course, got to mention Cyberpunk 2077 is based, the video game that was hated when it came out. Now I think they've been able to fix many of the bugs and improve the performance and get rid of some of the performance issues. That of course is based on Cyberpunk 2020 and Cyberpunk RED. John says, Jeff, think combat search and rescue for profit. Oh, that's pretty wild. That's pretty cool. I have to also point out, I would think that Mike Pondsmith would be a good interview. I think it would be a very interesting interview because he's been involved with the hobby for a long, long time. Now, I have heard some people comment that they wish that there was far more content out there for Cyberpunk RED. And we are going to be looking at actually grand total 5 releases from our Talsorian Games. 3 of them are books. So, of course, this is the first. And then we also have a data pack. And I want to say a net running deck. I'll show you when we're wrapping up the show. So it looks like we were getting some history. So I'm kind of curious in chat. Answer this question. It's like John says, yeah, Mike Pondsmith invented the game. Yeah, I know. I know that. That's what I'm saying. I think it would be a really interesting interview. In fact, he was one of the first African-American role-playing game creators that I was aware of, years and years ago. So Kevin says he's watched Mike Pondsmith GM a live stream game once. Seems like a cool guy too. I got to say hello to him, and that was it. I was interviewing Jay Gray, who is also one of the authors of this, at Gen Con a few years ago. And first of all, Mike Pondsmith wasn't at the booth, the little exhibit area, when I got there to do the interview, and he'd gotten there about halfway through the interview, so we wrapped up the interview, and I he was talking with somebody, and I hate like interrupting people. Way too many people with press credentials do that, and that's just not my style. And I just said something along the lines of, Mr. Pondsmith, I don't want to interrupt. I just wanted to say hi and, thanks for all the great work. And that was it. And then I was, on my way. So Kevin says they didn't know Mike Pondsmith was black until he saw the aforementioned live stream. So it looks as if, so we were getting a bunch of the history. Oh, this is the question I was going to ask. In chat, let me know when you're reading through a core rule book, do you prefer to have the history and all the background? Do you like to have that first and then get into the character creation and the rule mechanics and how you resolve conflict? Or do you prefer to have that first, like we've seen here? And once you've got your character creation and, how do you play this game, then you start getting all the background and supplemental kind of material about the game world and things like that. So we got Welcome to Night City. So to my understanding, Night City is kind of our default locale for Cyberpunk. So we get everyday life in the time of the Red. I wonder if there's a introductory adventure in here. I would think with this page count, probably. Flaming Heron says, back to what I was saying about the amount of choice we have today in general. Flaming Heron says, I think companies like Paizo Inc. spoil people considering the amount of content they release. We can never have enough. Yeah, Paizo's kind of the exception to the rule, though. And even Paizo Inc. now has kind of backed off a little bit, especially with Starfinder. So Starfinder, they're only releasing Adventure Path chapters every other month. So bi-monthly, yes, the correct use of the term bi-monthly, as opposed to like Marvel Comics. Oh, it's bi-monthly. So it's twice a month. No, that's actually not correct. So Kevin says they prefer character creation be front-loaded. Sometimes the lore is written so boring it can turn them off of the game. That's what I was kind of curious about. Flaming Heron says, it doesn't really matter either way. Jason points out if it's all in one chunk, they prefer all that background after learning the mechanics. Jason's also pointing out that the lore is sprinkled throughout the book. So as you can see, this is jam-packed. That's right. I was going to say they have beats, which I thought was kind of interesting. Like story beats. So I will have to dive on into that. So we get a cyberpunk bibliography. Do androids dream of electric sheep? Yep, read those. All of William Gibson's books, yes. Snow Crash by Neil Stephenson, I have not read. I think it's Stevenson. I have not read. Hardwired, yes. Voice of the Whirlwind, yes. Angel Station, no. There's Bruce Sterling. And those were Walter John Williams. Whenever I see Walter John Williams, I always think of Wild Cards, the Wild Cards books. And Modular Man, wasn't it? Wasn't the character, wasn't their name Modular Man? It's been a long time since I've read the Wild Cards. But he was actually my favorite character. Him and the Sleeper. Yeah, those first 10 wildcard books, 10 or so, were really good. So here we have examples of beats and battles. Huh. So they're just talking about different kind of story beats, right? A puzzle, romance, sabotage, a lie revealed. Losing the beat. In your average movie, the actors stick to the script and everyone knows what will happen next. Players in an RPG, on the other hand, are famous for surprising the GM. Oh, we know that's true. Just because you set up a beat chart doesn't mean the players will follow it step by step. And trying to force them to, usually called railroading, we talk about that from time to time, isn't much fun for you or them. Not to mention, RPGs like Cyberpunk rely on a certain amount of random luck to adjudicate the action. All it takes is a few bad rolls, and suddenly your carefully planned beat chart might fall apart. What do you do then? Improvise, of course. So here we've got our mooks and grunts, what we would normally refer to as a bestiary if they were creatures and monsters, but they are not. So these are the various different NPCs. And it looks like maybe I think this is a sample adventure here. I believe so. Yep, I think that's what it is. We're gonna wrap up with an adventure, and then I think finally we have a little bit of fiction again. So Jordan says they prefer character creation first, then lore. Yeah, so it seems like everybody's kind of on the same page here. So they like the character creation, learning the rules, and after that, then getting into the setting. And I agree with all of you. I'm like that too. Sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, there's 90 pages of background. Nah, I'm going to jump ahead. I do. I'm serious. So I'm like, first of all, I want to see how does this game operate? What are the mechanics here? So that is Cyberpunk RED, the core rulebook from our Talsorian Games. Once again, the 459-page hardcover is out now, carries an MSRP of $60, or you can grab just the PDF alone for $30 over at DriveThruRPG. So Fleming Heron says, yeah, sorry. They're going to be contrarian. They always have to be contrarian. All right, sweet. To be honest, I'm actually going to probably start reading this tonight. I am. I said it before when we were talking about imagination and stuff. I read a lot. I read far more as a kid. Summer days, it was not unusual for me to be up at 8 o'clock in the morning out on our enclosed porch reading until about 2 or 3 o'clock when most of my friends finally decided to make their way outside. And, I'd already gone through maybe a book, sometimes two. Coco B says they like the lore first, but they never read it until character creation anyway. There you go. All right, so tomorrow we're going to be taking a look at Tales of the Red. So I believe this is an adventure collection. So we will be taking a look at this. I think it's a variety. We were just talking about the beats. I think it's a variety of different styled adventures. They all have kind of a different beat to them, I guess. So we will be diving on into that. And as a bonus, we're going to take a look at the data pack. So that is on tomorrow's show. Then on Wednesday's show, we're going to take a look at what I do believe is the latest supplement that's come out, and it is Black Chrome. I think this is packed with options. So, it says 170 new items. So it's new weapons, new gear, new fashions. Isn't that on here? No. I think it was in the news piece I shared. It was like new fashions. And it's like, oh, can't wait. It's like, I'm going to go pick up that RPG book because it's got new fashions in it. I get what it meant. So, Disfile92 says, you mean Thursday's show? Yes, that is what I mean. I got to get used to the new schedule myself, just like you. Just like all of you. So we're going to take a look at Black Chrome on Thursday's show. And as a bonus, we'll take a look at the net running deck. So that will be on that. And then on, I almost said Monday, started to say Monday. Next Tuesday, we're going to look at the finale of Mercy of the Icons. It is Wake of the Icons. So this is part 3 of the Coriolis adventure campaign that has just come out. So we've taken a peek at the first 2. I got to be honest, it's been a while waiting for this to come out. I got to be honest, I don't know. After that finishes up, I'm not sure how committed Free League Publishing might be to Coriolis. Got nothing against it. I'm just saying, because there are, other fish to fry for Free League Publishing, like The Walking Dead. So, there's only so many role-playing games they can focus on. And of course, Symborum. Stay tuned tomorrow. I'll have a news piece about something coming for Symborum. So Free League Publishing's busy. Very, very busy. All righty. So that is it for tonight's show. A jam-packed, long show. One of the longer shows of recent memory. Although I think we hit an hour and a half on one of the shows last week. Thank you very much for hanging out with me and, putting up with the rambling. So I know some folks out there who are not familiar with the show, they tune in and they're watching it and they're like, okay, I thought this guy is going to look at XYZ game. What's going on here? When is this guy going to take a look? So if you're watching after the live stream's over, you don't have to worry about that. So there are timestamps. That's why sometimes when people comment, they're like, I can't believe I waited. I had to wait 35 minutes or 40 minutes. It's like, yeah, but there's timestamps. Why didn't you just use the timestamps? You could have skipped ahead. What can I tell you? It's an acquired taste. I get it. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me. If you were watching live, thank you kindly. If you were watching live and took part in chat, a big tip of the cap to you. Because not only are you keeping me company, you're keeping each other company as I sort of babble on at length sometimes. But of course, I know a lot of people out there, you don't have an opportunity to watch live. Doesn't matter if you're watching live or on Memorex. I really do appreciate each and every one of you checking out any of the videos here on the channel. I know we had some first-time visitors in chat. Hopefully we get to see you again. And of course, when you're not watching videos here on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more that you will not find here on the YouTube channel. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. I will be back tomorrow with Tales of the Red for Cyberpunk RED. And here's hoping each and every one of you gets to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.
Oh, hey, you're still here. Well, that's okay. You don't have to leave just yet. In fact, why don't you subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel right here, or take a peek at the latest live stream, or even find out what YouTube recommends you check out from the channel. And of course, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thanks again for watching.